everybody, today we're going to talk about what type of visas you can apply for your parents to come live with you in Australia. The visas that we will discuss will range from temporary visas through to permanent visas. It is a little bit difficult because there's lots of different visa options and obviously everybody's situation is different. So I'll provide a very general overview of some of the visas. Some of them I'll go into more depth, but because the different visa streams can get very complicated, I will do a dedicated video to some of these other visas that require a bit more work. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Traci Chen. I'm the principal lawyer at Mason Chen Law Group. We are based all across Australia. If you are into Australian migration, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button and share this video with people who need it. In addition, we also provide weekly updates on the changing Australian migration industry. I'll leave a link below to our website where you can subscribe, and we send out emails like once or twice a week with a breakdown of everything that's happened and new visa streams. Obviously, so much has happened around the world. So over the last 2 years, I've seen just like so much happen, so much change. It's absolutely crazy. So let's get stuck into it. Different parent visas that you can apply for. First of all, the most obvious one would be the tourist visa. You can apply for this for your parents whether you are an Australian citizen, Australian permanent resident, or just hold a temporary visa here in Australia. The streams that you would apply for do vary, but overall, you can just apply for a general tourist visa for your parents. Depending on what passport country they hold, you can apply for a subclass 600 visa, an e-visitor visa, which is the 651. You can actually apply for that visa using an app these days, which is really easy. I can actually link the app below for you guys. And it's just like any other general application form. However, with tourist visas, especially for the subclass 600, you do need to provide supporting evidence. So if you're just applying for a general tourist visa for your parents, you just need to demonstrate that they're a genuine tourist. They're going to come to Australia, holiday, stay with you, spend some time with you, and obviously head back to their home country. There is a specific stream if you are an Australian permanent resident or citizen. You can sponsor your parents to come to Australia on a tourist visa under the family sponsor stream, unless it's really required, and do speak to your migration agent or lawyer in regards to this. I probably wouldn't do that stream because normally speaking, that stream comes with a mandatory 8503, which means that when it's granted, it will have a no further stay condition. Now, most of the time, your parents will come to Australia, have a good time here, and obviously go back to their home country. But if anything happens, such as, COVID and there's a lockdown and they can't travel back, they can't apply for another visa on shore because the mandatory 8503 condition applies to tourist visas lodged under the family sponsored stream. And you have to apply for a waiver and it gets all difficult there. So that's why we do recommend to just apply under the standard tourist stream, visiting family and relatives, not the family sponsored stream. There is certain situations where you would apply for the family sponsored stream, and when a migration agent or lawyer looks at the application and they're eligible for family sponsored and they believe there's probably a high risk of refusal due to different circumstances, then in that situation it might be ideal to lodge under the family sponsored stream. But overall, if you're looking to apply for a tourist visa for your mum or dad come visit you here in Australia, you're looking at a subclass 600, e-visitor 651, and there's also a 601, which again is just relevant to what country or passport you're from. I have done a video that is dedicated to tourist visas. I'll link it below in the description, but feel free to just click on it and check it out if you are interested in tourist visas in general. The next parent visa that I probably consider for my clients would be the 870. It is the sponsored parent temporary visa, subclass 870. Now, unfortunately, you do have to be a permanent resident or an Australian citizen to sponsor your parents for this visa, and it is only temporary. But look, a lot of people who are studying here, currently on work visas here, who are waiting to apply for their permanent residence, I'm sure bringing your parents to Australia for an extended period of time to live with you has crossed your mind. So this is a really good one for you to consider. So first of all, for this visa, you need to have the eligible sponsor, which is the eligible child here in Australia, over 18, who's an Australian permanent resident or citizen. Unlike the other parent visas, which I'll talk about later, where there is a balance of family test and everything. This one, there is no balance of family test. So for example, if you're in Australia and you have 4 siblings overseas, you can still apply and sponsor your parents on this visa. The permanent visas, the more long-term visas, require for the balance of family test to be met. So for example, over 50% of the siblings have to live in Australia and be permanent residents. But that's not relevant to this visa, so I'll talk about that later. You must obviously meet the character requirement. You have to provide your police check as a sponsor. You can't have, any major criminal record. But the key thing here is that you must pass the income test. Obviously, if you're sponsoring your parents, they're here to live with you, they're not here to work. That would be like a work visa. But you have to meet the minimum income test. So in the income year prior to when you're lodging, your taxable income must be equal to or greater than $83,454.80. Now you can combine your income with your partner. So for example, if your income's not enough, you can add in your partner, so your husband or wife. You guys can add it in together to support this application as a sponsor for your parents. And basically that's it. So to be the Australian sponsor, the Australian child here in Australia, 2 main things. You need to be Australian citizen or Australian permanent resident, and you must meet the minimum income test. So as the applicant, which is your parents, let's talk about their eligibility requirements now. You obviously need to have a child here in Australia, so you can be a biological, legal, or adoptive parent of your Australian child. That Australian child will be your sponsor. There's no balance of family test for this one. The sponsor's application must be approved, so your child's application must be approved before you lodge this. And then you must meet the health and character requirements. So you can't have any major health issues and obviously no major criminal records. You will be asked to show that you have enough funds to kind of support yourself here in Australia, because this is a temporary visa where you come to Australia, you can't work, and it is a temporary visa, so you don't have access to Medicare. You have to buy health insurance. And this visa can be granted for anywhere up to 3 to 5 years. So the difference of that is just costs. I think for the 3 years, it's $5,000. And then for the 5 years, it's $10,000. And I know that sounds like a lot of money, but if your parents come here quite often and they do want to live with you and, live the Australian life with you, it obviously works out cheaper than regularly coming here on a tourist visa, going back and forth, the plane flight expenses there. But not to mention, your parents are probably a little bit older, it is very tiring for them. So yeah, that is a very general overview of the 870 visa. So next I'll talk about a couple of the more permanent visa options. It goes into a bit more detail here, so I will dedicate more videos just specified to these visa subclasses later. But this gives you a very good idea of what's actually available. So looking at the permanent visas that you can apply for. So the tricky thing about this is there's the type of visa, and they have a kind of a non-contributing one, which is one you don't really pay much for, and the one you pay a lot more for. And a lot of people ask, why can't I do this one here? And the answer is that because there's a cap to family visas in Australia, if you were to lodge one of the non-contributing parent visas, so it's called the 103 or 804, it's a permanent visa for your parents, I'm not sure if you'll ever see the grant, because the processing time can be like 40 years. I've never personally seen one. I did talk to someone when I first started as a migration lawyer, and they said they lodged the application in 2001 and they got the grant in 2011. So even back then it was taking 10 years, let alone now. So this visa gets a bit tricky. I will make an in-depth video about it. But basically, the key thing here is you need a sponsor as well as, your visa applicant. So you're the Australian child, you're the sponsor, and the visa applicants, obviously your parents. But the difficult thing is they must meet the balance of family test with this one, unlike the other one, because this is a permanent visa. So 50% of their children must be Australian permanent residents or citizens. So if they had 2 children, one was an Australian citizen, one's back home in, say, China, then they would meet the criteria. If they had 4 children, then it would be 2 in Australia, had to be permanent residents and citizens, and then 2 overseas, that's fine. And that goes, with 7 children if you had, so 4 have to be in Australia and 3 not in Australia. 4 have to be Australian citizens or permanent residents in Australia, and then there will be 3 overseas. And then obviously if you have only just 1 child, then, and they're Australian citizen or permanent resident, that's fine. It's kind of the similar requirements, so you have to meet the sponsorship requirements, and then as your parents, they just have to meet the visa application requirements, which is have the eligible child, meet the balance of family test, meet the health requirements, as well as meet the character requirements. Depending on their age, you might apply for the subclass 143 contributing parent visa, or if they're a little bit older, you could potentially apply for the aged contributing parent visa subclass 864. This visa, when it is granted, they do become permanent residents in Australia, which is great. They will have access to Medicare, and you may be asked to pay an assurance of support, which is basically a bond to the government so that they don't claim, government benefits. So if you're interested in any of these parent visas in detail, just drop a comment below. I'll do a more detailed video for these visa subclasses. And don't forget, we are a law firm based here in Australia. We service clients in Australia, everywhere, as well as overseas. So if you do have any queries or want a consultation, you can click the link below to book a consultation with myself or one of our lawyers. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video.